So if you were to look at a map of, let's say, American diplomatic traffic in the Horn of Africa, over the last few years, you'd notice a pattern. It's been hesitant.
Cautious is a good word for it.
Cautious, exactly. Bit of a cool shoulder, frankly. But then you look at the flight logs for the end of January 2026, specifically touching down in Addis Abeba.
And that pattern didn't just shift.
It's shattered.
Shattered is a dramatic word, but you know what? I think it fits here. We are seeing a pivot that is just, it's as loud as it is significant.
Yeah, because we're not talking about some mid-level bureaucrat dropping by for a photo op.
No, no.
This is a convergence. You have the heavy hitters from the State Department and the heavy hitters from the Pentagon landing in Ethiopia at the same time.
The diplomats and the generals walking into the prime minister's office together.
And that visual alone, it tells you half the story, doesn't it?
It really does. In international relations, who you send matters just as much as what you say. When you pack a plane with both the suits and the fatigues, you aren't just there for a chat.
You're there to talk structural power.
Exactly.
So that is what we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into this specific delegation, looking at the source materials from the Ethiopian National Defense Force, the PM's office, and the broader regional tour.
Right.
Our mission is to figure out why Washington is suddenly talking about a higher strategic partnership with Ethiopia, and here's the real kicker, how they think they can pull that off when their other big ally in the region, Egypt, is basically screaming warnings from the sidelines.
It's a very high-stakes diplomatic tightrope walk.
Yeah.
And to really get the gravity of it, we have to start with the manifest. Who was actually on that plane?
It's an impressive list. Leading the diplomatic side, you have the Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher T. Landau, but walking right there with him.
Is General Dagden Anderson?
The commander of AFRICOM.
In the United States Africa Command.
Okay, I want to pause on this for a second.
Right.
Because usually these two lanes, diplomacy and military, they operate on parallel tracks. You might get a State Department visit 1 month, then a security cooperation visit 6 months later.
Sure.
What does it tell you that Landau and Anderson are doing this in lockstep?
It tells you that for the U.S. right now, security is the diplomacy in the Horn of Africa. The two are inseparable.
You can't separate them anymore.
You can't. Having General Anderson there isn't just optics, it's about viability. It signals that whatever political deals Landau proposes are backed by actual military capability.
And I guess the other way around, too.
Exactly. It ensures that any military cooperation Anderson discusses has the necessary political cover from state. It's a unified front.
And they took that unified front straight to the top. They sat down with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Now, I was reading the readout from his office, and the language was interesting. He called it warm and constructive.
In the world of diplomatic speak, warm is a very deliberate word choice.
Right, because warm is not the word I would have used to describe U.S.-Ethiopia relations for the past few years. There's been a lot of friction.
Significant friction. But that language suggests a reset. Abiy Ahmed also emphasized mutual respect.
Ah, another code word.
It is. When a leader says that, they're usually saying, you're treating us like a sovereign peer, not a junior partner who needs a lecture. It suggests the U.S. delegation came in with a mindset of partnership, not correction.
Okay, so there was another meeting that I think gives us the historical anchor for this whole reset. Landau also sat down with the foreign minister, Gideon Timotheos. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs dropped this stat that I think gets lost in the daily news churn. They pointed out that the U.S. and Ethiopia have had diplomatic relations for 120 years.
It's a staggering number when you really stop and think about it.
120 years. I mean, that means these two countries were talking to each other long before most of the modern states in that region even existed.
Precisely. And bringing that up, that wasn't just a trivia nugget for the press release.
No, it felt strategic.
It was a framing tactic by the Ethiopian side. By invoking that 120-year history, they're basically saying, look, the last few years of tension, that was just a blip.
The norm is cooperation.
Exactly. It lets both sides sort of leapfrog over the recent awkwardness and ground this new higher strategic partnership in over a century of precedent. It frames the relationship as durable.
Almost inevitable.
Right.
So they set the historical baseline. They have the warm handshake with the PM. But then they did something visually fascinating. They didn't just stay in the conference rooms. They went to an air show.
The International Aviation Expo.
And it just happened to coincide with the 90th anniversary of the Ethiopian Air Force. I mean, can you picture this? The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State and the commander of AFRICOM walking around an airfield looking at fighter jets.
And their tour guide was Field Marshal Burhanu Jula,
The Chief of General Staff of the ENDF.
So you have the absolute top military brass of Ethiopia showcasing their hardware directly to the top U.S. military commander for Africa.
And let's be honest about what an aviation expo is in this context. It's a showroom.
It is absolutely a flex, a demonstration of hard power.
The source material lists a whole roster of who was there. It wasn't just the Air Force showing off planes. You had the Defense Engineering Industry Group, the Defense Forces Foundation,
The Defense University. And that list is crucial.
Why?
It tells the Americans that Ethiopia isn't just a passive recipient of security aid. They have a domestic defense industry. They have institutions. When the ENDF calls this a reflection of their long-standing experience, they're telling General Anderson, we are a capable actor.
We have infrastructure. We have 90 years of air power.
If you want a partner in the Horn who can actually project power, we're the only game in town.
And Anderson seemed to get that. He made a comment about the anniversary being a moment to strengthen future cooperation. He wasn't talking about sending aid packages.
No, he was talking about hard security capabilities, which brings us to the core substance of the trip.
Right.
The terminology changed. After they met with the defense minister, engineer Aisha Mohammed, they didn't just agree to cooperate.
They agreed to elevate relations to a higher strategic partnership.
That phrase jumped out at me, too.
It sounds impressive, right? Very official. But I always wonder, what does that actually mean on the ground? Because titles are free in diplomacy. What's on the to-do list?
Well, based on the joint statement, it's pretty specific. It covers, the standard deepening of diplomatic and military ties. But the real linchpin, the items circled in red ink,
Is combating terrorism.
it's the glue holding this whole visit together. You have to look at the map again. The U.S. sees the Horn of Africa and sees al-Shabaab in Somalia, instability in the Red Sea. It's a volatile neighborhood.
And they need a regional anchor.
They need a local power with boots on the ground and the will to fight.
And Ethiopia is raising his hand saying, we can be that anchor for you.
Exactly. But they're also saying, if we're going to be that anchor, we need the status that comes with it. We need that higher strategic partnership.
So it's a transaction, security enforcement in exchange for political legitimacy and support.
In many ways, yeah. General Anderson said the visit created space to address shared regional security challenges. That's military shorthand for, we have the same enemies, let's figure out how to coordinate.
Okay, so if we just looked at the Addis Abeba part of this trip, it all looks like a slam dunk. Old friends reuniting, checking out jets, agreeing to fight terror together. It's all very positive. But
There's always a but.
we have to zoom out.
Yeah.
Because Christopher Landau didn't just fly to Ethiopia and go home.
That's right. He was on a regional tour, January 24th to February 1st. It included Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Djibouti.
And the stop before Ethiopia was Egypt.
Which complicates the narrative a lot. You really can't understand the Ethiopia visit without looking at what happened in Cairo just days before.
To put it mildly. So Landau meets with the Egyptian foreign minister, Badr Abdelhadi. The U.S. State Department keeps the details pretty vague, discussed mutual interests, that kind of thing.
Standard procedure.
But the Egyptians, they were not vague.
Not even a little bit. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry and the local media were very loud about what was said. Abdelhadi gave two very specific, very sharp warnings to the U.S.
Let's break those down. First one was about unilateral actions on the Nile.
A direct reference to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the GIRD. Egypt sees that dam as an existential threat. They're telling the U.S., don't get so cozy with Ethiopia that you empower them to ignore our water security.
Okay, and then the second warning, this one feels even more immediate given recent headlines. He warned against any recognition of Somaliland.
Right. This ties directly into the deal Ethiopia has been trying to make to get sea access through Somaliland.
Which Somalia's government calls a violation of its sovereignty.
And Egypt backs Somalia 100%. From their perspective, recognizing Somaliland would be a massively destabilizing event for the entire Red Sea region.
So, I'm trying to connect these dots.
Yeah.
You have the U.S. delegation sitting in Cairo, being told by a major ally, warning, Ethiopia is threatening the Nile and Somali sovereignty. Then literally, a few days later, that same U.S. delegation lands in Addis, shakes hands with the PM, tours their military expo.
And announces a higher strategic partnership.
It creates a fascinating dissonance.
It really does. It suggests the U.S. has made a very cold, very calculated decision. They heard Egypt's concerns. They understand them perfectly. But they've decided that isolating Ethiopia isn't the answer.
That's a bold move. It almost feels like they're just ignoring the warnings.
Ah,
Or, or is the idea that the only way to influence Ethiopia on these issues is to hug them close?
that's often called the bear hug theory of diplomacy.
Right.
If you're on the outside shouting, you have zero leverage. If you're in a higher strategic partnership, maybe, just maybe,
All right.
you can whisper in their ear and talk them down from the ledge. But it's a massive gamble.
It is, because from Cairo's perspective, this might not look like a strategic maneuver.
No, it could look like a betrayal.
Like the U.S. is rewarding the very behavior Egypt is complaining about.
And that is the risk Washington is running. They're trying to maintain two critical pillars of influence in Africa, Egypt, and Ethiopia, whose interests are, right now, diametrically opposed. You can't make everyone happy here.
Now, there was one more layer to this trip that broadens the scope. While Landau was in Addis, he also met with the African Union Commission chairperson.
Mahmoud Ali Yusuf. Yes, a crucial reminder of why Addis Abeba matters so much. It's not just a country's capital, it's the diplomatic capital of the continent.
Exactly. If you want to talk about continental trade or humanitarian issues, you have to go to Addis. That's where the AU is.
And that agenda covered regional peace, commercial engagement, challenges across Africa. It just reinforces that you can't bypass Ethiopia if you want a Pan-African strategy. The geography and the institutions won't let you.
So if we pull all these threads together, we have the 120-year history being polished off. We have the air show. We have the shared counterterrorism goals. And we have the AU.
But you also have this massive wedge issue with Egypt and the tensions over Somaliland.
So what's the synthesis here? What's the real signal we should be reading?
The signal is that the U.S. strategy of containing or distancing itself from Ethiopia is officially over. Washington seems to realize that the Horn of Africa is becoming too volatile and maybe too crowded with other geopolitical players to leave a vacuum in Ethiopia. They've decided they need to be back in the game.
They'd rather be in the room with the difficult partner than outside the room watching the region burn.
That appears to be the logic, and this higher strategic partnership is the vehicle they're building to get back in that room.
So the bet is that security cooperation, fighting terrorism, is the bridge that can withstand the weight of all these other political fights.
That's the bet. They're banking on the idea that the threat of terrorism is big enough to force everyone to work together, despite all the tension over water and borders.
It's a pragmatic, almost ruthless prioritization of security over diplomatic niceties.
It is, but it leaves a huge question mark hanging over the entire region.
And that really brings us to the thought I want you, our listeners, to walk away with today. We're seeing this clear acceleration of U.S.-Ethiopia ties. The logic, counterterrorism, regional stability, it makes sense on paper.
But diplomacy never happens in a vacuum. Every action has a reaction.
So here's the question. The U.S. is deepening its security pact with Ethiopia to stabilize the region. But its other key partner, Egypt, insists that Ethiopia's behavior is the source of the instability. Can Washington actually empower Ethiopia militarily to fight terrorists without also emboldening them to take the very unilateral actions on the Nile and Somaliland that could trigger a much larger state-on-state conflict?
That is the needle they are trying to thread. Can you empower the partner without validating the provocateur?
And if they slip, the safety net is very, very thin. We'll be watching to see if this strategic partnership brings stability or just raises the temperature. Thanks for diving in with us.
Always a pleasure.
Stay curious, everyone.